Let's get into our final top five, or well, not final actually. Sorry, our final top five bottom five of the regular season. So I started off last time. I'll let you start off this time. What would you like to go with first?
I think it's a win, so I think we'll stick with top five.
Mhm.
So leading off my top five in the number 5 spot, I have planting the flag, and just I think the
Absolutely.
overall energy from the end of that game. It like I don't want to be like cliched, but like that was the most back the program has felt in a
Mhm.
while. Like beating FSU by 3 scores on their home field, and then doing that. Obviously, I mean, the lock screen on my phone for like 3 years was the picture of Chauncey Gardner getting stopped from planting the flag by Willie Taggart. They're both
Yep.
like wrestling for the flag. It was awesome. So definitely got those kind of vibes from it. People are mad about it. They need to grow up, win the game if you don't like it. That's basically how I feel. I think that was awesome. I don't like that Billy apologized for it, but hopefully he is taking a different tone when he's actually addressing the team about it.
I think Billy may have been more apologizing for like the players almost fighting.
Yeah.
If you saw Marcus Burke and Cormani McLean, they were stomping on something. I know they stomped on the field as well. That might be more what he's apologizing for than the flag, but the flag was just in the crossfire of it,
Well, the flag was kind of what kicked it off too.
Yeah.
I mean, like the whole engagement, like it was the same thing we saw at like 9 other games yesterday, where like guy tries to plant the flag after winning on the road and a brawl starts because of it.
Absolutely. My number 5 on the top 5. It's an interesting one. The DB depth. I mean, we saw Jordan Castell. He got hurt after like 20 snaps in that game, and Greg Smith actually comes in. And I mean, I know this FSU offense isn't really high powered to go deep on you, but still, we didn't give any of the deep balls up at all. So give him some credit. Plus, Jameer Grimesley, Traquez Bridges got shooken up for a couple plays. So Grimesley played a bit more than he probably expected to, and didn't really give up any big passing plays again. I mean, I gotta give the DB room credit. You can't really take away anything, but I'll give them some credit. They could have fell apart and let the FSU offense tear them apart a little bit, but they didn't. And I'm gonna give room that we've hated on a bunch in this show some credit for how they played.
Yeah, you're right. We have hated on them a bunch, and I'm glad you put them in there for yours because, like, I think while we can hate on them to an extent, I think that group continuing to work and grow week by week is like a big part of the reason that this hasn't fallen apart this year. I mean, the amount of injuries they've suffered in the secondary, like, would kill most teams. We would just ruin the season. And we saw it against Texas. They were not ready. But I think they've improved down the stretch. They're playing, pretty well. And yeah, FSU's on a team like built to, beat you on a bunch of plays. That's not their MO in the slightest, but they did a good job. That's still a team that has a decent amount of high school talent, whether they develop it is another thing. But yeah, I mean, those guys have continued to play hard down the stretch, and that's a big reason why this team's 7-5.
Absolutely. Bit of breaking news while we're live here in the middle of the show. 4-star defensive lineman Joseph Mbachu has reflipped his commitment to the Gators.
Wait, what?
Are
you serious?
Happened.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, you're seeing our reactions live.
He decommitted from the Gators about a month ago. And then he committed to Texas last week. And then he just flipped. Yeah. I heard he was on a visit, and I heard there was a decent chance that we get him back. We'll get onto that a bit later. We'll finish this segment, and then we'll talk about it a bit later. Just wanted to give that breaking news. I mean, recruiting's on a tear right now. Okay, go to your top 5 on the bottom, or bottom 5.
Yeah, so in my bottom 5, number 5 spot on my bottom 5, we've had him in our top 5 the last few weeks, but I've got a quiet night from Elijah Badger. I think it was one of the more disappointing things about the offense for me in this game. Only 2 catches for 11 yards for Badger on 4 targets. Yeah, 4 targets. So I mean, this is a guy who's just been torching people, getting open on these deep routes. And I like, that was, I think, the main thing I'll say that I was wrong about going into the FSU game was Florida did not really hit those big plays. Not even at like not a high clip. Like, it didn't really hit like any of them for the most part. Like, they really struggled to hit those, and Badger wasn't a big part of the offense. So I thought that was a bummer. Yeah, Clayton, I mean, you were right to an extent for sure.
Yeah, we projected us to win we both had us scoring 40 plus points. I had 40.
Yeah, we had a 27-point margin. They won by 20. So, I mean, not like massive difference, but yeah. We had like something like a 27-point.
We both expected us to be more high-powered at the start, and
Yeah.
then backups coming at the end and slow it down. But
Yeah.
going on to my bottom 5, you talked about Badger or the receiver room. I have the wide receiver drops. The Gators had
Yeah.
4 drops in this game. One of them was like probably fully on Lagway. Like Burke had to come back for the ball. Like it hits Burke in the hands and he doesn't catch it. But that's a hard pass to catch. Lagway should have pointed it a bit better. But like the other ones, I mean, Tony Livingston going up for a tough ball, has it in his hands though. He kind of needs to come down with that. There was another bad drop by DK and Marcus Burke as well. So it's like the wide receivers, they were kind of letting us down. And then you also, not just the drops, on the Lagway pick, Marcus Burke obviously ran the wrong route there. Lagway called the audible before the play, and Burke was supposed to run a hook or a short hook route there, and he went deep for some reason, just didn't get the play call, I guess, and led to the pick, which could have been a difference in our score lines being correct. But yeah, I mean, from a wide receiver room, we have really hyped up this year. This was definitely their worst performance. Now, that FSU defense does have some guys like Azariah Thomas and Ventrell Cypress who will get chances to play on Sundays, maybe be good players on Sunday as well. But yeah, just very disappointing game from them.
Yeah, again, we've said it before. Like Florida State's defense, I mean, more so up front than in the secondary, but across the board, it's not horrifically bad, at least talent-wise. But yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, like, you saw like a lot of Marcus Burke in this game. Don't think that was for the best. But credit to him, he did have that touchdown catch.
He did.
That was nice to see. But yeah, I mean, the drops really hurt you in this game, especially in a game, and I'll get to it later in my list, but where DJ Lagway is just not playing his best. Like just straight up, he's not playing his best game. You got to bail him out more than the receiving room did yesterday, I would say.
Absolutely. Would you want to get into your number 4 now?
Yeah, number 4 in my top 5. I got a guy who like I've just been really impressed with down the stretch of this season. I got Jaden Robinson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we've seen Florida's linebacker depth get kind of tested this season, at different points, but he's a guy that really has stepped up. I mean, at 5 tackles last night, 2 sacks, just was really impactful. Like, I think he's had a lot of impactful games, but last night was like probably the most I've seen him just really change a game single-handedly. So something you like to see. I mean, that's, again, I think that one of the biggest bright spots on this entire team is the guys on defense that have stepped up across the board.
Yeah, that linebacker room. And we're bringing in a 4-star in Ty Jackson, who's going to be a really good player, I think, and a more developmental guy in Miles Johnson. And we probably keep Shamar James, so we're just going to lose the veterans and Moten and Mwingo this offseason, more than likely. Yeah. So it's like, man, this linebacker room, maybe one of the best linebacker rooms in the country for the next couple of years. So I'm really excited about it. Jaden Robinson, I liked what we saw from him last year. You can definitely tell he just needed to get more size onto him, being a freshman. He still has really good speed, had 2 sacks as well, so he's really good at the blitz and QB spies. So I'm really excited to see Jaden Robinson. Getting on my number 4 on the top 5, I have the running back room. I felt like the offensive line didn't give him a consistent chance to make plays, but when they gave him the chance, they hit those plays. I mean, we're talking about Montreal Johnson with his 65-yard touchdown run, had like another 11-yard run earlier in the game. Jacoby Jackson on his touchdown run, he had a couple big runs there. Jaden Ball had 60 yards. So it's like, while the offensive line was really inconsistent, if an offensive line is inconsistent and you don't have really good running backs, they're not going to make those big plays. But we do in Montreal, Ball, and Jackson, and they made those big plays. And that was really the difference maker in this game. So I want to give them the shout out.
Yeah, fully agree. I've got more about the running back room later, so I'll kind of leave it at that for now, but I'll just say completely concur there. Okay. Moving into my bottom 5. Next up, I've got something that's kind of continued to be a bit of a bugaboo for the Gators. I've got the time of possession. I mean, I don't think in and of itself it was a problem, but again, you've lost the time of possession in this game. You also Florida State had more first downs than Florida did.
Yeah.
And like, again, like this game was I never really felt like this game was in doubt after at least maybe like the first quarter or something like that, when it became apparent FSU wasn't going to score. But like, I just, again, and there's more I have to say about this later too with the offense, but like it just was frustrating that they couldn't just like take over the game, like run. I mean, they ran the ball for 235 yards, but they didn't have these like long commanding drives. They didn't have consistent ball movement throughout the game. it was frustrating to see against a team where I like really felt like you could dominate in that regard coming in. Like I thought it would play out a lot differently than the LSU Ole Miss games, like on a fundamental level, and it really just
didn't. No, it did not. I would have liked to see us dominate the game a bit more because we made the plays that they didn't, which really was the difference. And they had eight forced fumbles and 6 recoveries for us, or 5 recoveries. I can't remember.
5 recoveries.
But 5 recoveries. So yeah, we made the plays to win the game and win it pretty largely. This is also kind of how FSU has been all season. I mean, you go back and look at some of FSU's losses. It's not like they're most of the time losing because they're just being outmatched. Like you look at Duke, they threw 2 pick sixes in that game. They lost by 7 points.
Yeah.
You look at the Georgia Tech game, they lose that by 3 points. A Georgia Tech team that's proven to actually be a pretty decent team. So it's not like this FSU team has been completely outmatched by many teams. You really just look at like Notre Dame, and I guess UNC also did pretty well, but still, I'm not going to hate on the team for winning by 20 points on the road against against a rival opponent. But again, on my number 4, I can't hate on DJ Lagway. So I'm going to blame it on DJ Lagway's hamstring. You could tell that his hamstring just wasn't looking the same that it has the past couple of weeks. Even on the throws he did make, like the 2 touchdown throws to Livingston and Burke, they were still pretty behind the receiver. So luckily the receiver did make the play. But Lagway's hamstring prevented him from putting enough arch on the ball to where he's leading the receivers more. I'm glad we're going to get Lagway at least 3 weeks of rest to prepare for this bowl game. Hopefully more than that too. But, hopefully that hamstring is better to where he can also be more mobile.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like, I agree. I hope you're right. I hope you're right that it was mostly a health thing. And I think that's probably fair to say. I mean, it's kind of funny. It's now been 2 games in a row where, like, the commentators right at the start of the game are like, his hamstring's bothering him. We're going to see, like, he might not have the green light to run. And then he, like, immediately tries to scramble. He didn't really do that a lot, though, after, like, the first drive of the game. I don't think he looked like particularly uncomfortable, like moving around in the pocket, but I think maybe it affected his mechanics a little bit.
I'll also say FSU was getting a good pass rush on him. So with the hamstring plus being a freshman, getting all that pass rush, converting pass rush onto Lagway, I think it definitely bothered him a bit. And I mean, hopefully he learns and gets better.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I agree. Going up next into my top 5, I've got something we talked about a little bit, but it's the turnover battle. Really good in this game. A big part of the reason you ultimately won by 20, despite kind of having a dud of a game offensively, all in all. 5-1 on the turnover battle, I believe. Obviously, all 5 are fumbles. I mean,
yes,
like FSU, man. I know it wasn't as bad as you and I thought it was going to be, but like I think that team looked about as bad as I thought they would be. I mean, put the ball on the ground 8 times. Like, Jesus, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's horrific. And losing 5 of them, like, I mean, Florida just had a million opportunities in this game. And if they took advantage of a few more of them, this could have been, I think, a lot more like the win that you and I kind of hoped and expected we would see. But that doesn't change the fact that FSU never really had a chance just because they couldn't stop giving the ball away.
Yeah, they couldn't. I mean, the Gators took enough advantage to win the game like in pretty easy fashion. But yeah, not enough to pull away in the game. But I'm going to go to my my third of my top 5. I'm going to go what this win does for the program.
Yeah. Because
not just is this a win against a 2-win team, they did it in front of a bunch of recruits, which we're already seeing it pay off for us with the commitment of Joseph Mbachu, but also we're getting a ton of other crystal balls. We did it in front of 5-star offensive lineman Solomon Thomas, who I think keeps trending towards the Gators, in my opinion. But it's also a game that we were on a 2-game losing streak to FSU. We saw earlier in the day Michigan, who was on a 3-game win streak against Ohio State, where Ohio State was 4-score favorites, maybe. I can't remember. But they were more favorite than we were against FSU. And Michigan still pulled away to win that game and get 4 straight. You saw Miami get upset by Syracuse in a game that Miami was a 2-score favorite, I think, against Syracuse, maybe 3 scores. But we saw it all day with upsets and very close games. So to still get a comfortable win, I think it's a really good moment for this program to look forward and hopefully put that performance in the past, but put just the win in general in front of everybody. the recruits, the transfer portal, and it still looked like the players were hyped up, even though it kind of was a bit of a dudded performance or a lazy performance. So I'll take that every day of the week.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's obviously because it's Florida State, it's different than it normally would be beating like maybe the second worst team in the entire Power Four behind Purdue, like maybe. I mean, because again, it's FSU. Like, yeah, you didn't turn in your best game and you still won by 20 points. And like, I think that's such a good point to bring up them and what happened to Miami, because it wasn't that long ago that it looked like Florida's standing compared to its in-state rivals looked like it was going to be really bleak. I mean, Florida State was coming off a huge year. Like, it felt like Mike Norvell was really getting it going. Cristobal, had all the hype coming into the season, and then they prove it seemingly in week 1 against the Gators. But now things have turned. Obviously, FSU's had the worst team in their modern program history, and like Norvell's not getting fired, but like, I mean, they're hiring Gus Malzahn. Like, this doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel like this is heading in a good direction at all. And Cristobal, like, they're about to miss the playoffs and have like half their team leave. Yep. So it's not as dire as it looked like it was. And I think winning this game handily just like proves like, hey, like Florida's right there in the mix with these guys.
And I'll also say, FSU, their recruiting class took another big hit. Their third highest ranked player, Peyton Joseph, 4-star offensive lineman, flipped to Georgia Tech earlier today. Yeah. I mean, man, like, I don't know what FSU is going to do, because I think we'll get into it later. Solomon Thomas is gone. And their second highest ranked commit, Kevin Wynn, he has projections to flip to South Carolina. So, I mean, this class, their highest ranked player is going to be the QB, who was the backup plan after Trammell and Carter Smith decided not to go to FSU. So they're looking at, I wouldn't even say the third QB, because there's also higher QBs on the board earlier that they probably missed on. But I'll say the third QB to give them some credit. Like, probably the third quarterback they were looking for. I mean, he's going to be the highest ranked commit, and he's like a 200 type of guy. I mean, FSU and Gus Malzahn, I don't think he's going to be good at all for them. And if they want to fire Mike Norvell, it's going to be $50-60 million next year. So,
yeah. Real quick on FSU, I haven't fact checked this, but I saw a tweet today that if they have one more decommitment, their decommit class is going to rank higher than their actual 2025 recruiting class.
Wow. I mean, if that commitment is Solomon Thomas, that's probably 100% true.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not ideal.
But
moving on to, number 3 in bottom 5?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. I've got something. I won't talk about this too much, because we kind of already have. I have DJ Lagway's poise, and again, like, don't want to hold it too much against him. He's a true freshman playing on the road while limited with a hamstring injury that takes away a big aspect of his game. He played fine, especially if you believe that the interception was not really on him, which it kind of seems like was the case. So I'm fine with it overall. I just think, like, and he made some really nice plays. Like, don't get me wrong, the one where he shrugs off the defensive tackle to roll out and then find DK with a perfect pass. Like, dude was cooking at times in this game.
He was.
He also had a lot of misses, like missed plays that could have been big plays or nice gains or first downs, or even, I think, in at least one instance, a touchdown. So like, I just think that, it wasn't his best game. And I think we knew this was coming. He's a true freshman, and he's been really good in the games he started. And it was probably his worst start to this point, I would say.
It was, I'd say. As well.
I guess my whole thing with DJ is I would just say, like, hopefully it's not an early bowl, which we'll get into in a second.
Yeah.
And they have like more like a month for him to rest, and hopefully we kind of see a more 100% DJ against whoever that bowl opponent ends up being.
Yeah, absolutely. I already talked about DJ Lagway's hamstring as my bottom 4, but I mean, I already hope gets that month rest, and I hope we see a mobile DJ Lagway, because we haven't seen that mobile DJ Lagway since the Georgia game. And, I mean, he's making those crazy plays against Ole Miss and LSU, and made some good ones against FSU as well. I mean, I want to see him make those insane plays as a mobile guy. I mean, we might need it depending on who our bowl opponent is too, which we'll obviously get into. But my number 3 on the bottom 3, the fluidity of the offense. I felt like we were throwing it on first down a bit too much, or the run plays just wouldn't work, and we kept getting behind the sticks, You're getting in second and longs, third and longs. And even sometimes on third and shorts, we just weren't converting them. I mean, now that's partly because of the drops and misses from Lagway. But, I mean, I also feel like it's been on the play calling. And, I mean, we already talked about it last night. This game, while, yes, was a great win, and hopefully looks to be a great win for the future of the program, but I just got lost what I was saying. But it looks like it was a great win for the future of the program. But it really proved that Napier does need to go out and get a solidified play caller.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was and again, I have something kind of more about this here later. So I think a lot of similarities on our list today, but yeah, I mean, I agree. I think last night, if you are someone who wants to see Billy Napier succeed here, but you're also someone who believes that he needs an offensive play caller, I think last night was the perfect result for you. Because I think it demonstrated that while you still beat FSU by 3 scores. And again, I'll get into more of that later. But leading up, going back to my top 5 at the number 2 spot, I've got something you talked about already here. Just the run game, man. They just continue to be just workhorses. And I think that, I mean, for a team that ran the ball 30 times in this game or something like that, it didn't really feel more than 30 times, 34 times.
Wow.
Not counting Lagway's carries. Yeah. 34 times. So, I mean, it didn't really, did it feel like that to you? Because I felt like Florida should have I think Florida should have run the ball 40 plus times.
That's how I felt. I felt like we abandoned the run for some reason, but we did run 40 plus times. I mean, 34 times. So
it wasn't, I agree with you. I think it was more of a situational thing. I think it was just not running the ball when we should have, and not the success we weren't having on passing downs that made it kind of feel worse than it actually was. Because obviously ran for 235 on these guys, which is again, a decent front seven, but
I mean, 200 yards in any game I'd take. I mean, 200 rushing yards is not an easy feat.
Yeah. So, I mean, bottom line, those guys played really well. And I want to give a special shout out to Montrell, man. For a guy who kind of I don't want to say got supplanted because he was hurt, and Baugh and Jacoby were playing really well in his stead. But exactly. Yeah, they bought out. Exactly. But I think Montrell coming back, working his way back into the groove and being willing to split carries as the senior here, the guy that's been here for a while, the program guy, just love to see it. And he had a great game yesterday.
He absolutely did. I have a player for my number 2. I have Miles Graham. I mean, you talked about Jaden Robinson. I'm going to talk about Miles Graham. I believe he was our highest rated PFF graded player for this game. With Pup Howard out, Jaden Robinson playing. Now, Graham was in that Jaden Robinson role that we've seen Robinson excel at. We're also seeing Miles Graham excel at it. He's really good at stopping the run, playing decent in pass coverage. I mean, the evaluations, now we're lucky that this evaluation is also a legacy guy with one of the best running backs in our program's history. But still, getting him onto the team, we've seen Mullen miss on a bunch of different legacy players. Emmitt Smith, EJ Smith went to Stanford instead of Florida. So it's nice to see us actually get those players. And then the development at the linebacker position. We lost our defensive coordinator, who was it again, to Texas A&M. He was the linebacker coach, Brad Bateman. And we saw the improvement a little bit on the linebackers last year, but we bring in Ron Roberts, and Ron Roberts has in this linebacker room playing, maybe again, I already said it, one of the best linebacker rooms in the country. And it includes those young players like Miles Graham and Aaron Childs.
Yeah. Just more guys, young guys that have been thrust into key roles and had to play a lot of big time snaps. Maybe we've hashed this out on the show already. So sorry if we're redoing this, but am I crazy for thinking that Pup's starting job is not guaranteed next year?
I think you are.
Maybe that's fair. This isn't a Pup thing. This is not a Pup thing at all. This is about the way the young guys are sort of starting to flash in the linebacker room. And then maybe Shamar might not come back either. Maybe that just is the solution there. But you got a lot of guys here who look like they could compete for big time reps next year.
I'll say when Pup was on the field, he was outplaying Shamar. But since Pup has been hurt the past couple of games, Shamar has probably played his best football this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Shamar's been all over the place.
Clayton with his own top 5. One of my top 5 would be the right hook from LJ McCray to the FSU QB. LJ tweeted after the game that was accidental. I don't think he would really lie about that, but it was a kind of awkward thing. So, hey, we love it. We love to see it against a rival. And did it get flagged? Or he did get flagged for it. What am I saying? That was a bogus flag. Come on. Yeah. Roughing the passer. Hey, bottom 5, the refs. FSU had 0 penalties in this game. There were a couple obvious penalties, holding calls on them that I mean, there was a false start on it. I don't know. The refs get a bottom 5.
Yeah, between all of Miami's like mishaps this year, or I guess the opposite of mishaps because they keep getting extremely lucky. But like between that, like it has not been a banner year for ACC officiating. That is for sure.
It has not. No, I mean, oh man, Miami got. I'm not gonna say they got bailed out, but like they kind of got bailed out in a couple of games, like Virginia Tech and Cal.
Oh, they absolutely got it. They literally got bailed out in the Virginia Tech game. And I think the Cal thing might have been the more egregious call. It just didn't necessarily flip the game.
All right, let's get on to your bottom 2.
Bottom 2. Next up, I've got in my bottom 2, I've got the offensive line and pass pro. I mean, we've talked about it a little bit today, but like Lagway was just under pressure all game. And that was a little frustrating to see against a offensive line, that I thought had played really well. I mean, LSU's defensive front is nothing special. Ole Miss's is, though. Yep. And they handled it last week, I thought, very well. Didn't play as well in this game. I think, what was that? FSU hires a coach who put on his team to coach players who put on the team.
Yeah.
Yep. Can't argue with that. But no, I mean, like, I don't think Lagway only ended up getting sacked,
once.
3 times? Only once? Wow. It felt like a lot more than that. But
maybe he got sacked again in the end of the game, like fourth quarter.
Also, FSU's credited with 4 quarterback hurries, and I think they're conservative in terms of how they credit quarterback hurries. So it probably was even more than that if you're like being real about like hurries that actually impacted the play. I mean, I think that's a big part of why why you saw Lagway struggle at times, with his accuracy and such.
Yeah, the O-line definitely, I mean, they disappointed in this game. Also, I forgot to mention on my last one, play calling. We should have ran more screens and quick plays because they were bringing blitzes and getting pressure. So to counter that, you run screens. I mean, we have players like Aiden Mizell and Elijah Badger and, I mean, DK and Tate Hawkins, who actually got a decent amount of playing time in this game. They can take those screens and turn them into big plays. So I would have liked to seen that. But getting on to our top 1, I still have my bottom 2. We gave up a lot of yards to FSU, I feel like. I mean, on that third, fourth quarter, they were driving a good bit on us. Now, this had been the strategy for like LSU and Ole Miss, who had struggled scoring in the red zone. But I would have liked us to see us play a bit more aggressive, because at this point, we're not playing SEC teams that are in the top 10 of the talent rankings. We're playing an FSU team that their offense has been horrific. So I would have loved to see us be a bit more aggressive. It is a rival. I mean, we got 8 sacks, so it's not like we weren't aggressive. But like with our coverage, we were still playing soft coverage, just letting them dip and dodge on us, which they did pretty successfully. I mean, when I previewed the game, I said their best chance to win it, get sacks or get pressure. They did that, and take the checkdowns, which they did. So I would have liked to see us be a bit more aggressive, because, I mean, I know we're on our 5th string defensive players at this point, but I still feel like those guys are better than FSU's starters. And they're also missing players as well. So,
yeah, I mean, I feel like we're maybe splitting hairs a little bit here just because they still only had, they had less than 250 yards in this game. But, like, I think you're right to an extent. Like, I think when Kromenhoek wasn't just under siege, which he was for, like, a good portion of this game, they did, like, have some plays and move the ball. I mean, they actually didn't run the ball too much in this game. They had a lot of guys to carry the ball, but like 21 of the 44 carries are Luke Kromenhoek, and he went for 32 on those, which is a third of their yards. So, like, they didn't really do much. I mean, Toafili had a couple nice runs, but like
maybe they got a lot of there. Penalty yardage. That might be because we had like 7 penalties in this game. Yeah, which I think at halftime we only had like 2 or something like that.
Yeah, it was 7 penalties for 70 yards on the Gators.
So I think most of those happened. I think that happened in the second half. So that's where we saw maybe a good bit of those yards come from. Like that roughing the passer was a 15-yard penalty right there. So that we talked about with McRae. So maybe that's a bit. I mean, it's nitpicking here. I mean, I feel like the mistakes we made were pretty obvious in this game with the offense really. So I wanted to get the defense a little bit of a nitpick there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these kind of turn into nitpicking after 20-point wins. It is what it is, but you're never perfect. Going to my top spot in my top 5, probably not really a surprise considering what we've talked about already.
Both have it.
Yeah, do we? I mean, we've had it again. The defensive line, the
Yeah,
pass rush.
that's.
I mean,
I literally have the D line.
I think I've had them as my number one for the last 3 weeks, and like, sorry, I'll take them off when they
Yeah.
stop playing at an extremely high level. But that's not the case right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were fantastic.
I'm the same way. I had the D line number one. I mean, Caleb Banks and Cam Jackson both got hurt in this game. Jackson returns and gets 2 sacks. Caleb Banks, before getting hurt, was disrupting in the backfield all game. 14 TFLs, so add 6 TFLs to those 8 sacks. I mean, and the 8 sacks is crazy. I mean, I think Tyreek Sapp, if he returns next year, could be an all SEC level player because he has 7 sacks on this season, with most of them coming in probably the last half of the season.
Yeah.
I mean, we're looking at a guy who can get 10 sacks. And who was the last player to do that at UF? Jonathan Grenard?
I was about to say probably Grenard.
So it's been since 2019 that UF has had a person with double-digit sacks. I think you could have that in a guy like a Tyreek Sapp. And, I mean, hopefully we get an elite edge transfer as well that can also maybe have a close double-digit amount of sacks.
Yeah, Pyburn had a sack in this game
He
too.
did.
I think he's playing really well down the stretch, even though he's not necessarily like a prototypical like pass rusher. I would not necessarily say.
I was shocked.
Like
he impressed me with his pass rush a bit. I mean, it wasn't the most fancy things, but and it's not the greatest line. But still, I mean, he's taking advantage of his matchup, which that's all you can do in a game.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, losing Banks and Cam Jackson at different points in this game, like battled through that, had a great game. I mean, that was the reason that despite the fact that everything else kind of had some issues, this game was like never really quite in question at all.
Yeah, a couple strip sacks. I mean, we didn't even pick up one of the strip sacks. Yeah. So it's like FSU got a bit lucky there. But yeah, this defensive line, I mean, we do lose Cam Jackson, Caleb Banks next year. We obviously lost Justice Boone, but hasn't really been much of a factor since it's been playing at an elite level. But we do have guys like Cam James, who is also stepping up, TJ Searcy, who is getting better, and we're seeing it. I mean, Kelby Collins was our highest ranked recruit in the class of 2023. So, I mean, he's going to be at that Caleb Banks role, and if we can see the development that Banks got, you give someone who was as highly rated as Kelby Collins was that same opportunity, I mean, we could be looking at someone even more dominant than Banks.
Yeah. I mean, and hopefully Collins, sticks around. I think that's a guy that maybe is a portal watch, but hopefully he doesn't. Yeah,
hopefully not. I would love to see him stick around. We also had some young players like DeAndre Robinson. He felt like he was all over the field when he was on the field. So another young defensive lineman stepping up. I do think we probably need one veteran transfer in this offensive line. I mean, also losing Desmond Watson, nose tackles. So we probably need 1 or 2 transfers on that D-line. But, I mean, the young players are stepping up. The veteran players, Tyreek Sapp really is going to be that big veteran presence next year on that D-line.
And I'd be kind of surprised. Like, you're saying Sapp might go pro?
No, I'm saying he will be the veteran presence on that D-line next season.
No, sorry. You said if he comes, assuming he comes back earlier.
About Sapp?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, he could go pro. I mean,
I was just curious because I didn't really think that was much of a possibility. I was curious if you thought maybe it was more than I did.
We see players go pro that never really should have gone pro.
Yeah, so I think NIL is changing that a little bit.
That's true. I'm not going to rule anything out the books,
Yeah, for sure. Finishing up with the bottom 5. Again, I won't hammer this because we've talked about it already at a pretty easy extent. But I just wrote the offensive game plan in general because I just didn't really get it. Like, I mean, it's kind of all encompassing the issues you talked about, like the down to down fluidity, like the getting away from the run game, the kind of lack of, I guess, just juice in the passing game. Like, I'm not sure how else to describe it, but it wasn't there. We weren't finding those quick, easy plays for Lagway to make at a lot of times in this game. Like, I just think it all in all could have been better against a team that I really expected the offense to have its best game of this. Like, because the offense, I don't think has been fantastic over the last 2 weeks, but I think it's been plenty good enough to win. I was kind of hoping you would get that breakout, standout game from Lagway in the offense, and obviously that just did not happen.
Yeah, definitely need an offensive coordinator. We'll probably cover some possible candidates in the next show or two, which I mean, they definitely need it after that performance. But to wrap this up on my bottom 1 and the bottom 5, I have the interior of the offensive line. Damian George is out for this game, but I had really high hopes for Bryce Levette. I had given him a ton of praises this year. Didn't really deliver. Daryl Jackson was in the backfield all game. Number 6, I mean, he got shrugged off by DJ Lagway. So that that's what's gonna go on the highlight reel. But they're not gonna show him getting probably 3 of the pressures at least, because I felt like it was him who was doing them when they were getting pressure. So it's like that interior offensive line definitely needs. Maybe they just weren't motivated for the game. I mean, Slaughter still graded out really well in this game, so I guess it wasn't most on him a lot. But like, I mean, you gotta think the one outlier was Levet. I mean, I don't know how good Harris was. I haven't rewatched the game yet, but not Samson. Sorry, I was thinking of Okolova, but Solomon Thomas definitely gives him an opportunity to come in right away, in my opinion, when you're losing Damian George. So we definitely need to improve this interior of the offensive line.
Yeah, I agree. I think it maybe, was made me a little bit less bullish on the idea that I think it's clear you need to portal a couple guys on the offensive line this offseason. And I mean, I will just point out, again, we've talked about it before, but this FSU defensive line, the production hasn't been there. But I mean, they have guys like Patrick Payton, who was expected to be an early day one pick coming into the season potentially. Hasn't panned out that way, but these guys are talented, and I think they had more success probably than Florida was anticipating in this game.